All right, so we are back tonight with Brad Bradley. Brad, a lot of questions came in, as I'm sure you've seen through your website and everything else. We'll just go through them one by one. For those of you that sent them all in, we tried to combine, many of you asked the same type of questions, so we tried to combine them into similar things, and we tried to get to as many as we could. So, first one, Brad, is there a possibility the guy in the cabin next to you allowed her to leave by way of his deck? Crew members have keys to everything.
I mean, I guess, there's a lot of possibilities. The fact that her shirt was in the room that she was wearing when I went inside and the door had been opened, we know she came back into the room. But I suppose if someone, was working with the neighbor, they could have gained access through his room and like I'm sure you've seen, and something we didn't know until very recently that those partitions between the balconies can be opened or moved. So, yeah, I guess the simple answer is it's possible. But I think you know, if that were to be the case, he was involved for access, but I think it still doesn't change the three eyewitness sightings of Amy with yellow that morning afterward. So I don't know. It is. I guess anything's possible.
Right.
Hmm.
Nate, ask Brad about Amy's shoes. The documentary said her shoes were found on the balcony. Were other shoes missing from her belongings? If she left the room on her own, she wouldn't have left barefoot, would she? If she fell overboard, all shoes would be accounted for. Do you think the Bradleys have her belongings from this trip? Maybe friends could reassemble her outfits and determine what is missing.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's got to be the number one question I've answered. I don't know how many times on all the different forums. I guess the first thing is we didn't ever catalog how many pairs of shoes Amy owned. She brought several pair on the trip, and we don't know how many or exactly which ones, other than the ones that we still have. So there's no way for us to determine which, if any, are missing. I don't know that it's a factual statement to say that she couldn't have been barefoot. The two eyewitnesses that saw her go up the elevator, I've spoken to them recently, and they said the way from their viewpoint, they couldn't see her feet. So there's no answer there. The shoes that she was wearing that night at the pool party and I believe in the disco were kind of like a Birkenstock sandal. And those were, beside the chair she was sleeping on the balcony. But whether when she came in the room, took her shirt off and grabbed another pair of shoes, we don't know. There's no way for us to tell which shoes are missing because again we don't know how many or which ones she brought. And when we got back to her apartment, we don't know which, again, not having ever cataloged how many pairs she actually owned, we don't know which could have possibly been missing from her apartment either. So I don't know. I don't know. I wish there wasn't so much focus on the shoes. I'm not sure that has a whole lot of bearing on what happened, but I understand people's curiosities, and I've been happy to answer it over and over again.
Right. I think about, when I go on vacation with my wife, I have no clue how many pairs of shoes she brings, So if she lost a pair, I wouldn't know. So I
Right.
see your point there. Someone's wondering if you've ever been in touch with Natalie Holloway's mother, Beth. She went missing in Aruba, and Aruba's part of the ABC Islands. Maybe she might be able to help.
Yeah, we have spoken to Beth Holloway many times. We actually did. I think she was a producer on a TV show called Vanished that actually did a story on Amy's story. So mom and her have spoken at length over the years, repeatedly, a number of times, and there's a lot of similarities between the case. Just for the fact that Amy was invited to Carlos and Charlie's, which, as you know, was the bar that Natalie was in the night she went missing on the same island. So same place, and the crew on the boat was interested in taking Amy to that bar. So, we've thought there may be some kind of connection or some sort of trafficking operation that runs through that place. I think I've heard that bar is no longer there on Aruba. Don't
Mm.
know, but yeah, the short answer is we know Beth Holloway and have spoken to her a bunch over the.
I'm sure that's helpful to have kind of an ally who's been in a similar situation as you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a lot of questions about this one, and many people were upset that I didn't drill you on this. I didn't get the impression from watching that the parents were upset about Amy's sexual orientation, but I've read online others felt that way. Were Amy's parents okay with it, given that she was gay? Do you think internalized or externalized homophobia, and that could have contributed to her death?
Okay, that was a multi-part question.
Right.
I guess to start out, we didn't have a problem with Amy's sexuality. I mean, there was some surprise and I guess some confusion and initial, feelings about it from my parents' point of view. I never personally cared at all. That was, 3 years or more prior to this trip. It had been well gotten over. Nobody had any issues. Any stories about any contention between Amy and myself or Amy and my parents is completely false. And so, no, I don't know, internalization or externalizing homophobia. I don't know. I don't think Amy cared. We had her girlfriends over the house, spend the night. We had girlfriends go on trips, family vacations with us. And like I told you before, I think Amy had a boyfriend at the time. So, we loved Amy like we always did. And there was no issue there whatsoever. So people, are going to think what they're going to think. But there was none of that crap going on.
Let me follow up, Brad, because I've worked on these type of programs before where a producer will come and interview me about a crime story or something I've covered. And then when it goes to air, you can tell that they've left some stuff out, or they've played up other parts to make the story a little bit more juicy, a little bit more I don't want to say sensational, but to keep viewers tuned in, where they'll play up a part that really they're playing it at a 7, but really it was like a 3 or a 2.
Yeah.
Would you say that's how you viewed the whole sexuality component to the Netflix docuseries?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we all thought it was irrelevant. I mean, her sexuality, in our opinion, had nothing to do with her disappearance. And I think the time spent on that show discussing those issues, and again, they apparently interviewed her, the guy she was dating at the time, flew him out to Utah or wherever and interviewed him for 5 hours, completely excluded him from the story to paint a certain type of picture. And again, it was irrelevant. Whether she dated men or women or whatever, it had no bearing on what happened to her. And I think the time could have been better spent with some other pieces of evidence and information that weren't included in the show. But that whole thing is upsetting because obviously Amy can't speak for herself and tell everybody that we were as loving and as close a family as any there were no issues at all. We were all we all had great relationships. So again, it's frustrating that people think what they're going to think, and not a whole lot we can do about it other than to refute it.
All right. Do you think it's possible that Amy walked off the boat with Yellow, whether by force or on her own free will?
I don't think the free will option is there. I think Amy was too smart to get off the boat when we're supposed to be getting off the boat shortly and go on some mystery excursion with a guy that she had just known for a couple of days. Again, I've touched on, people have asked a lot of questions about whether she was looking for drugs or whether we were talking about trying to find drugs. The answer is no to both of those. Amy didn't do drugs. We didn't do drugs together. We never talked about doing drugs. We weren't looking for drugs. So that whole part of the story about her trying to find drugs, I've never bought at all. I think that I don't think there was a whole lot of free will of anything going on with what happened to Amy. So I don't believe she walked off that boat by choice. If she walked off the boat with Yellow, which again, the eyewitnesses that state that she went up the elevator with him up to the Viking Lounge. The one eyewitness that wasn't included in the documentary that was inside the Viking Lounge that saw them come off the elevator and Yellow handed her a drink. Then the eyewitnesses from outside says, 10, 15 minutes later, whatever it was, Yellow comes back walking by them by himself. So I believe she was handed off to another crew member or other crew members that then took her down into the lower decks, and whatever happened from there happened. But again, I don't think she walked off the gangway on the land side. I think we discussed that before.
Right. Okay, another question. The military guy who saw her said she told him she was just, well, you kind of addressed this. She was just trying to score some drugs and now she's being held against her will. Was that a possibility?
Yeah, and then that's the only part of that guy's story, other than the fact he didn't tell us until 2 years later when it was too late, that I don't buy. Whether that was some story that she had been fed to tell people as to why she was there, potentially, if that was her, in fact. But I don't believe she's held in a brothel against her will for a $200 debt she owes somebody for drugs that she was apparently looking for. Amy, again, no history of drugs in her life. It was alcohol, like beer and cigarettes was pretty much it. So I don't buy that part of the story. So for whatever that's worth, that part of his claim has always kind of struck me a little bit funny.
Right. Okay, if she had been on the island for all these years, why wouldn't the police or government there say something?
I mean, I personally believe the police or government are involved in some of these operations. We've learned a lot of things and been told by a number of people that customs officials are um, in on things, harbor police are in on things, local police are in on things, and who knows about the government? These cartels that run drugs through these islands, get a hold of whoever they want to get a hold of to make sure that their operations go the way they need to go. So, I don't think you can trust local officials. Again, just an opinion I hold to help with much when that stuff is, probably still ongoing all around those places.
I imagine there's been so many days where your family's like, who do you trust? Like,
Yeah,
who do you go to?
yeah.
Okay. Was the man, oh, what was the main thing Netflix got wrong in their documentary?
I don't know that they got anything wrong necessarily. I think that unfortunately, and again, my intent from the very beginning has never been to throw any shade their way. We're very, very grateful for the job that they did in telling the story and gaining so much interest around the world. Um, I don't know that they got anything wrong. I think the fact that the thing was only 3 episodes just made it quite impossible to include a lot of important information. And again, I guess the whole thing about Amy's sexuality kind of took up a little bit too much time, in my opinion, and doesn't have anything to do with anything. I think that if I had to answer your question, not that they got anything wrong, but if they did get anything wrong, it was just putting that stuff in the documentary when there was a lot of other pertinent information that um, was a lot more interesting than what that was.
Brad, was this one of those things that they worked on for a few years, or did they come to you guys like last year and say, hey, we want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole project took like uh, maybe a year and a half in total. I don't know that they were already working on it. Maybe they were. I don't know for a fact if they had already done work on it prior to coming to us to ask us if we would agree to work with them on it. Some of those interviews were um, were like in the spring or summer of 2024. And then we repeated them a number of weeks later, I guess after they went and interviewed other people in the story, then they'd come back to us and do follow-ups, kind of like we're doing now.
Yeah.
So I think the total project, and I'd have to look, I'm just guessing, was probably about a year and a half worth.
Okay.
Mhm.
Why do you think nobody on the ship took it seriously when Amy first disappeared?
Well, I think the biggest number of people didn't know about it because it wasn't reported by the authorities on that ship. Um, so I think there were a lot of people. In fact, I've heard some people say that they were on that cruise and never knew about it until after the cruise was over.
Mm.
Um, I don't think there's a lot of people that can say that, but there's definitely a few that I guess weren't paying attention. But um, the I don't know what to say about what the cruise ship did or didn't do. I think their actions and or their inaction um, make them responsible and or irresponsible for the amount of time that passed between when she was first reported missing and the time that they made people aware with flyers, which I think were was close to 48 hours after we reboarded the ship. So I don't know what the motive there was and whether that's the right word to use or not. Um, whether it was intentional or unintentional, or whether they just weren't prepared for a situation like this, or whether um, they were protecting their liabilities, which I've always kind of long held that suspicion.
Sure.
Um, so I don't know. I think there were a lot of mistakes made. There were a lot of things that could have been done that were refused or weren't done. There were things that we were told that were done that we found later weren't done, including the thoroughness of the initial searches that were done on the boat in the earliest and most crucial hours of following her disappearance. Um,
Right. If Yellow or someone killed Amy on the ship, wouldn't the cruise line find the body? Or do you think it's possible they stored her body somewhere and then disposed of it in the middle of the ocean after the cruise ship left the dock? Sorry to be so morbid.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's possible. I don't know if she were murdered on the ship. And her body was still there, yeah, I'd assume somebody would eventually find it. If she were, and again, we don't know whether or not, you know, she was taken off on that island, which I personally believe for a number of different reasons, or whether she was kind of stowed away and hidden until they got to the next island. There's just there are a lot of unknowns. I don't think that she was murdered on the ship. We've got multiple eyewitnesses, from months to several years after her disappearance that are all very credible. Um, and so I think again, I go back to I think she was taken down to the bottom of the ship. I think she was removed on the backside of that ship on the water side during the early morning hours and handed off to whoever was involved, on that island. So, and that goes back to the taxi driver Deshi, who is no longer with us, but he claimed to have seen Amy that morning, come to ask him for the phone. We talked about that in our first interview. And then he came back to us and spoke with my dad and I when we went down 2 weeks later to search the island and hold press conference and all that stuff. And very sincerely told us that, she didn't fall or jump, that she's on that island. And if you could have seen the look in his eyes and the seriousness of what he was getting across to us, it was pretty plain to us that he knew something more, but couldn't or wouldn't share.
Mm.
So I don't think she was killed on the ship. I think she was removed for other reasons. And again, my strongest suspicion is that she was taken into some sort of sex trafficking type situation.
Mm. Have you ever thought about suing the cruise ship? Couldn't they be held responsible?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, is a short answer. We did file suit against the cruise line back about, I guess I'd have to look exactly how long it was after Amy disappeared. I think it was a little over a year um, following her disappearance, and we brought a suit for negligence. The suit was dismissed by the judge, who later recused himself from the case. Make of that what you will, uh, because they said that we withheld witness information or certain leads that we had gotten. What most people don't know is that we supplied through discovery 87 pounds worth of paper files, which included every single thing we had ever learned or been told or found out, every single lead we ever got. So there was absolutely nothing withheld. And my opinion is that, again, I think the fix was in. They dismissed that case on a technicality that actually wasn't true because they had every piece of information that we had. They based that on, you know, depositions that we gave basically under emotional duress, trying to answer their questions hour after hour after hour after hour. I mean, I think I was deposed. I don't remember whether it was 13 and a half or 18 and a half hours worth,
Wow.
but it's a lot of questions and a lot of information that you try to basically go from memory. I mean, it wasn't like I had studied for a test. I think got some names mixed up, and basically they used all that against us and got it thrown out.
Mm.
And again, my mom witnessed the judge talking to the company's attorneys in a very friendly manner just prior to the dismissal, and then shortly after the decision was made, that judge recused himself from the case. So yeah, I've nothing I want more in this life other than getting Amy back is uh, for that cruise line to be held responsible for what they did and didn't do.
And this question follows up with that one. Have you been back on a cruise and would you go again if you haven't?
No, no, and no. The less I see a cruise ship, the better. It's obviously kind of a PTSD type thing. I don't have any interest in it, and I think if people knew what we've learned and what we've found out over the years about what goes on in and around these ships, they wouldn't want to either.
I know in the series they had the cruise expert on there talking about how, once you're in international waters, good luck. You're
Yeah.
there. Are there any reforms or any mandates that you wish cruise lines had to follow?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it'd be interesting for your viewers to check out the gal I did an interview with, named Katie Beck
Yeah.
on Untold. She actually interviewed Jamie Barnett, who runs internationalcruisevictims.org on Monday, and I think it airs tomorrow morning.
Oh,
Um,
good.
she's going to have a lot more information to share. And she's much more well versed in what goes on on cruise ships and how many people have died or have gone missing that no one ever hears about, no one knows about. If you go to internationalcruisevictims.org, you can scroll for a fairly long period of time, all the different names and stories about things that have happened that no one's aware of. Um, I think, I think I've heard recently that there are some sort of apps where you can, I don't know whether, I guess it's on your phone, or I don't know whether it's something that the cruise lines give you when you get on, where you can locate the people that you're with using the app. So I think that's a good idea, and that apparently has already been instituted. I think that the petition on change.org for Amy alerts is a really good thing. I wish it had been thought of and implemented a long time ago. And basically, it's kind of like an Amber Alert when a child goes missing, to make sure every passenger on that boat is alerted immediately. Because if you have a couple extra thousand eyes and ears looking around and listening, you have a much greater chance and opportunity to prevent what happened to Amy from happening. If more people had been aware that morning from the get-go, we may not have lost her. But I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm missing and not including here that I either haven't thought about or haven't studied up on. But yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done, but I don't think the amount of people, the people that those ships hire are from other countries and those islands. Um, and I think, and again, this is just an opinion that I hold, that the reason that they hire people from other countries is because our authorities can't do anything about it. If their employees are involved in crimes, they can't. They basically are protected by international waters and jurisdictional barriers. So I don't know. I think the laws need to be changed. I think there needs to be some adjustments to some of the treaties that are held between, these sovereign countries and our own, so that, when people from United States or people from any other country go missing in a different place, that, our authorities are able to conduct an investigation consistent with what would happen here. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't.
I'm glad you brought up the Amy's alert. There were a few questions that came in about that. I honestly had not heard about that until some of you viewers sent that in to us.
Mhm.
Be sure you watch Katie's story tomorrow. Katie is an excellent journalist, Katie Beck from WTVR. And back when I worked in Richmond, we both worked the evening news. We were at competing stations, but
I didn't
she
know that.
she scooped me a lot. She's a good reporter,
Yeah.
and just a good person
Yeah.
too. Just a great person. So I look forward to watching that interview with the cruise expert.
Yeah.
Two more questions from our viewers. The first one: do you think Amy will ever be found?
I don't know. Obviously we hope that she is, but it's an impossible question to answer. I think chances are probably greater that she's not, given the amount of time that's gone by and the amount of balls that were dropped, in the early stages of the investigation and along over the years. So I think the odds are stacked against her and us in our ability to find her and bring her home. But we know there's not a zero chance of it. So we're gonna keep on pushing as hard as we can to make something happen. Um, you know, I think I'm used to the roller coaster of getting your hopes up and getting them dashed and getting your hopes up and getting them dashed. And I can't tell you how many times over the years that we've been on that ride. But this is another one, and we're kind of on we're ticking up for the big hill, and I'm hoping it's not, it doesn't end up the same way that we've uh, found it to end, many times over the years.
Right.
Um, so I don't know, and that's a tough question to answer whether I believe she'll be found or not. I have, a lot of hope towards that direction, but obviously, no idea.
Last question: what is your message for Amy?
My message to Amy, Amy, if you're able to see this or hear this, um, we love you more than anything, always have, we'll never stop. We're never going to stop looking for you unless we're presented a reason that, there's no, reason to continue with it. But um, we're trying as hard as we can. Please don't give up. We won't give up, and we love you. And all we want is to get you back home safe and help you get through this. So if you're out there, hang in there.
Brad, thank you very much for coming back. Give people again the name of the website and the GoFundMe.
Yeah, well, the website is amybradleyismissing.com.
Right.
The tip line is amybradleyismissing@gmail.com. Our tip line to call and leave, a voice message is 804-789-4269 or for Amy. And then the GoFundMe, it's posted on my X page, my TikTok page. The links are in my bio there on both of those places. The Find Amy Bradley Facebook group is a really good resource to find all this information on too. Yeah, and so donate if you can, $1 at a time. This stuff that we're doing now, and following up on these leads and all this computer work that has to be done, and it's not free, and we don't have enough to cover what is coming at us. So the two volunteer projects that have gained some pretty good traction with the Project Miata and Project Bailey. Again, those links can be found on my pages in the link tree bio thing. Yeah, but thank you for your time, Nate. I appreciate the follow up. I'm happy to do this anytime.
Thank you very much.